Hello and welcoming you guys to the post-game show for One Piece chapter 1150. In case you guys are new here, how this works is that we like to go through the comment section of the previous chapter review video to see what theories everyone is cooking up. You might be asking, Sai, why do you do this? And the answer is simple, because I can only cook up so many theories of my own in my bubble. That is why I like to see what people other than myself have to say in regards to the latest chapter. It is a community after all, right? There's so many of us who read and watch One Piece, and we all interpret it in different ways. And that is why I like to see what the comment section has to say week by week. With that being said, with that introduction out of the way, let's get right into it with the top comment, which says, Imu, using the power to turn people into allies reminds me of Mihawk talking about the ability to turn anyone into an ally being, quote, the most dangerous ability in the ocean. I think this is supposed to be a clear parallel between Luffy's ability to do that and Imu's ability to. One does it naturally, while the other does it by force, and I feel like that is something that will be used against Imu to defeat him in the final war. Also, side note, it is interesting how Mihawk pointed it out. Might add more validity to how he may have been a god knight and knew that Imu had this same ability. I like that. I do see the clear parallel, and I just gotta say, but since Imu's ability to turn people into his allies gives them a base power boost with their demonic forms, I wouldn't be shocked if all of Luffy's allies in the final war, all the allies that he acquired naturally, also get power boosts somehow, some way. I think he'll be done with the Drums of Liberation and maybe the Sun God Nika form, and maybe he's able to give people a part of his flame and they could fight with it. I think that'd be pretty sick. But yeah, outside of that though, I do agree that Mihawk being the one who points this out is actually quite meaningful. I don't think Mihawk was a former Holy Knight by any means, but I wouldn't be shocked if Mihawk was a Celestial Dragon though. Maybe he's a bastard child, kind of like Bonnie, or maybe he's a full-bred Celestial Dragon that simply got abandoned, kind of like Shanks, right? Shanks is a pure-blood Celestial Dragon to our knowledge, and he kind of got stolen by Roger. Maybe Mihawk was in the same boat, but he was just a little bit less fortunate. The reason I say less fortunate is because Oda actually drew Mihawk as a child before, and he looked poor. You know, he looked like a raggedy kid. So I think Mihawk definitely went through the ringer, but yeah, I am fully on board that he has Celestial Dragon ties in him. And I think that is going to be one of the best ways to tie Mihawk into the current story, because right now, Mihawk feels like such a weird character. Because we always had this setup of, oh, him and Zoro are going to be one of the final matches in One Piece, and I still think that's true, but up until we get to that fight, how do we build up Mihawk? Because right now, he's just this wall that is there, right? How do we add context to the wall? How do we add story and depth and layers to that wall? I think it has to be with backstory, and the only way to properly introduce Mihawk backstory without it feeling out of place would be if it tied to the Celestial Dragons and the world government. Or at least that's my opinion. And also, another thing to help validify the Mihawk Celestial Dragon tie would be a non-canon attack move by Mihawk from One Piece Pirate Warriors 4. I know a lot of people right now are booing, they're dismissing this right off bat because I said it's from a video game, but you gotta remember, Oda and his team work hand in hand with the One Piece video game studios. Oda and Bandai Namco have a long history of working together. Oda's written the story for, I think, 3 to 4 One Piece video games already, and whenever they use a devil fruit in a video game, they do have to contact Oda and get direct permission so Oda can tell them yay or nay about it. So you could look it up. Oda does have ties to Bandai Namco, and the reason I point that out is because in Pirate Warriors 4, one of Mihawk's attacks, I might be butchering the name a little bit, one of his attacks is actually called 16-Day Moon. And you might be wondering, Sai, what does that have to do with the Celestial Dragons and the Holy Knights? Well, Doflamingo's final attack against Luffy was actually 16 heavenly bullets. And then, when we were at Sabo Archipelago and we met the Celestial Dragons for the first time, we learned that if you cross paths with a Celestial and they don't like you, they shoot you 16 times. And then, Imu, if you were to break down his name, or her name, whichever one, if you were to break down Imu, the E would be translated to 1, and the Mu would be translated to 6 for 16. And the thing is that is something Oda's been pretty consistent with Luffy, right? With Luffy's Gomu Gomu no Mi, and that is why Luffy iconically has the 5-6 written on either his shirt or even on the baseball bat we saw back at Egghead Island. So Oda is very cognizant whenever it comes to these numbers. So I think giving Mihawk an attack called 16-day moons means that he is a celestial dragon, or that he at least has ties to the celestial dragons. And I'm gonna be honest, I think Shanks even will have an attack that uses the number 16 somewhere down the line. I see it like this. The rules are like the board game Reversi. 2 initial pieces are defined, Dory and Brokey. If they're defeated, they turn into black pieces. Anyone who is between 2 black pieces also becomes a black piece. A black piece can be turned into a white piece by placing it between 2 white pieces, and vice versa. Will there be initial white pieces, Luffy and Bonnie, Loki? That way, Luffy and Imu can, quote, fight indirectly for now, and Imu's powers are still bound by rules. If that is the case, maybe we'll see a gag transforming giants from one side to the other. Yes, I think this is going to be the main way to even liberate Dory and Broggy. I think Luffy will have to distribute his white Nika flame somehow, some way. And right now, I really think the only way to do that is by actually taking Luffy's white fire and throwing it at people. It's kind of like how back in Thriller Bark we used salt to purify the zombies. Maybe Luffy will do that with his fire. And maybe that is going to be like the undying fire that Vegapunk was actually looking for, right? It was actually Luffy all along. They don't call him the Warrior of Liberation for no reason. There's no way he's not going to be the one who liberates the giants. Could the reason Joy Boy's friends apologized to him be because Imu turned them against him? That would be a cool way, narratively, to make Joy Boy lose. And then, if Blackbeard gets Imu's fruit, he's basically going to be that MHA villain, and it's Jover for Luffy. And third, they say if the slaughter in the castle really involved the Holy Knights or even Imu, Yarul could know what Gabon knows about their powers and show off here. Although, I'd rather we learn that from Gabon. Parentheses. Also, Yarul lost 2v1 to a toddler, so I don't have high hopes for him. Okay, we're gonna tackle this piece by piece. So the first part, I love that. I would love it if the reason why Joy Boy lost was because his friends got turned. I don't think that would make any sense because obviously we're talking about how Luffy could purify his allies or purify Dory and Broggy. So if Joy Boy wasn't able to do that exact same thing, that would be kind of crazy. But you know, if I were to eliminate that theory from my mind for a minute, I do like this. I would love it if Joy Boy was like Luffy, where he's unable to actually hurt his Nakama. Kind of like Sanji at Whole Cake Island, right? Luffy was fighting Sanji, and Luffy was like, hey, I'm not gonna hit you, man. Sanji, this isn't you. And then Luffy just took all the blows. That could be the same thing that happened to Joy Boy. Maybe Joy Boy saw all of his friends turning into demons, into monsters, and even though he could beat them, and maybe he threw a couple of punches, he still did not want to beat them all the way. So yeah, I really would like this idea. And also, this would be... Okay, I don't want to make this decisive announcement, but if I recall correctly, this would be the first mutiny in this series, wouldn't it? Because in this arc, right, in Elbaph, we got the first version of walking the plank with Gunko making Ronya walk off the arrow. This could be the first mutiny, right? As time goes on in this final saga, we could get more and more pirate activity. And yeah, if they mutinied against Joy Boy, against their will, I think that'd be really freaking sick. So now, on to the second portion about Blackbeard getting Imu's fruit. Too broken. Imu right now already feels absurdly broken because they're able to give other people contracts, because they can just, I don't know, like Wi-Fi tap into Gunko, because they have these crazy eyes. They also have their own crazy shape-shifting body back at Marijoa. Like, Imu just seems too broken, and I don't think it's a fruit. There's no way Blackbeard and Imu actually combine. I will admit, though, that would be the perfect final villain. You know, just a mix of everything, mix of every power out there. But I almost feel like that's too much. I'm okay if Blackbeard gets more than 2 or more than 3, more than 4, more than 5 devil fruits. But getting Imu's powers on top of all of that, that might be too much. I don't know. Like I said, I'm cool with Blackbeard getting every devil fruit known to mankind. But getting Imu's powers might be the icing on the cake that we do not need, you know? As far as the third one goes, yeah, I definitely think Yarul will be able to show out, but I would rather get that from a different character. Like Loki, for example, Harden, the Straw Hats even. You mentioned Gabon a couple of times. I'm even fine with that. Yarul, I'm just so mixed on him, man. Like, I have no reason to hate Yarul, and I don't hate Yarul. I really don't. But I will admit, the pre-time skip Elbaph blues really hit me hard when it comes to Yarul, right? Yarul losing 2v1 against a toddler when Yarul was apparently in his prime. Nah, man, that's just bad PR no matter how you spin it. You could say Yarl was scared to fight a kid. You know, he didn't want to hurt Big Mom, but that wasn't even the case. Big Mom killed one of his homies, brother. So it's tough to come back after that, but we know he's going to do it. I mean, hell, if Dory and Brogy were able to get an insane glow up, then there's no reason Yarul wouldn't be in the same boat. So I am expecting a lot from Yarul. I just don't know how much to expect. And also, how cool will he actually be in a fight? And keep this in mind too, Yarul has a giant Resident Evil ass weak spot on him. The sword that's sticking in his head, that hurts him. Usopp slapped the sword. Yarul was yelping, brother. Now imagine if a villain was fighting Yarul. That sword would be the first thing to go after. Hell, yank the sword out. You'd kill him right then and there. So I don't know. Maybe Yarul does go really hard. That is kind of what I'm expecting. I just don't know what that would actually look like right now. I mean, I think the sickest thing, the most aura points Yarul could get in a fight would be from if he's able to pull the sword out willingly, and that's what he uses to fight. I think that'd be kind of cool. Wouldn't make any sense, but it would be cool nonetheless. But yeah, maybe he does have a one-up though, because like you said, maybe he's seen the Holy Knights before. Maybe he's felt Imu's powers before. Maybe he even saw how King Harold fought against it. But this is all just up in the air, man. I don't know. It was kind of obvious, but we have another Conquer's Haki user confirmed to add to the wiki. I expected nothing less from the king of the world. Yeah, it was pretty obvious, huh? It's funny because, like, I've never heard anybody really debate it. We just all kind of assumed it. Like, yeah, Imu? Yeah, they have Conqueror's Haki. Like, how could a character who's been sitting on the MD throne for the past 900 years not have Conqueror's Haki? That would be blasphemous. You know, maybe it's like one of those things where Imu wasn't born with it. You know, his parents never had it, so they never got it. But come on, the ambitions of a conqueror are definitely there. And also, even with their family name Norona? Dude, Norona? I'm gonna admit, man, I've never really power scaled last names in One Piece, but I think Norona's pretty tough. Which now begs a really odd question that I never thought I'd actually ask ever. But if you guys were to take on a last name that exists in the world of One Piece, what last name would you take? Because I think I would actually take Norona. Like Monkey D, that just sounds a little bit odd. You know, like Monkey D Luffy works because it's an anime, but I can't imagine somebody in real life being called Mr. Monkey. Ah, Monkey-san. You know, like that just feels odd. I think Norona's just tough though. Norona's tough. Don Quixote is also not bad. Honestly, I feel like the Celestial Dragons, they have the most aura when it comes to last names. So I think that's generally where I would go. But yeah, Norona's my pick. What would you guys pick? So now, right below, Majin says, Imu to the Gorosei after finding out Marijoa is on fire. Retrieve Jimbe. Dude, that's so funny. You know, speaking of comments like this, let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Me and Brago did a collab a while back, and he just finally posted it on his channel. And the top comment literally says, stay safe, Sai. I heard Marijoa is on fire. Crazy times the world is in. And I just started busting up laughing, bro. That's so funny. But yeah, I do think they need Jimbe up there. But here's one better. I'll do you one better than the Gorosei retrieving Jimbe to put out the Holy Land fire. And that would be if Arlong was there. Think about that for a minute, dude. We've all been waiting for Arlong to make a comeback, and he has to. There is no way Arlong does not make a comeback in One Piece. Dude, hell, if Don Krieg made it to the New World and is currently at Hachinosu Island, there's no way Arlong isn't too. Whether he's in the New World or up at Marijoa as a slave, I think Arlong will make a comeback. And you might be saying, Sai, Arlong's ass, I don't want him back. You can believe that, but hear me out. Arlong is literally Jimbe's brother. Like, when you think about the end of One Piece and where characters will end up, I feel like Jimbe is the only character out of the bunch who doesn't exactly have a character to go back to. Luffy can go to Boa Hancock, Nami can go back to Nojiko, Usopp goes back to Kaya, Zoro goes to Wano with Hiyori, or he goes back to Shimotsuki Village, Chopper can go back to Dr. Kureha, Brook can go back to Laboon, Frankie has a whole ass Frankie family, Robin has Saul and the Library of Ohara books, if that survives this arc, and then Sanji has the Bratier and or Pudding. Jimbe, I don't know, does he go back underwater to the fish people? I mean, sure, but he doesn't have that character waiting for him at home. So I really do think him going back to Arlong, or him meeting up with Arlong and working towards a brighter future together would be beautiful. And I think that's what they should have done after Fisher Tiger's death. Of course, Jimbe wanted to do that, but Arlong went the opposite path. So maybe if Arlong was being held hostage, or, you know, being held as a slave up in the Holy Land, maybe that's where he'll have a change of heart. Maybe he worked with other humans who were also slaves, and he realized that humans aren't the problem. It's really just the celestial dragons, which I think should have been the main takeaway, right? But, you know, that's besides the point. Either way, though, I really would just love a Jimbe Arlong dual attack. And maybe, you know, going back to Arlong, maybe Arlong is the one who puts out the fire at Marijoa. Like, imagine the Holy Knights are just walking around and they have a chain, and Arlong is at the end of it, throwing water everywhere. Maybe that's it. Maybe I'm expecting too much with that headcanon, but I really am an Arlong fan. I really hope he makes a comeback and he changes his ways. And maybe, I mean, people don't like it when I bring this up, but maybe he even apologizes to Nami. Which, obviously, apologies can only go so far based on what he did to Nami, but hopefully he just takes that step, you know, a baby step, a baby step. So now this comment says, I honestly don't see how Luffy doesn't take a huge L here and is forced to retreat. Also, Joy Boy and Imu have the best Haki feats in the series. That cock was amazing. Pause. Yeah. I agree. I don't know how Luffy will actually win here. Of course, earlier, I was talking about how Luffy could distribute his white flame and save the giants, but would Luffy actually do that right now? I don't know. And that's simply because Luffy still doesn't know what devil fruit he actually has. He still thinks he has the Gamu Gamu no Mi to this very day. Despite going into Gear 5th multiple times, despite people calling him the Sun God, the Warrior of Liberation, the White Warrior even, Luffy still thinks he has the Gamu Gamu no Mi. So until Luffy comes to the realization of what he is, I don't think he'll be able to stop Imu's Domi Reversi or even beat Imu. What I think could happen, instead of retreating, I could see the Straw Hats going to the Heaven Realm, which I know sounds odd, but we don't know what's up there. We don't know why Imu hasn't even gone up there. The Holy Knights haven't gone up there. So whatever's up there must be either important, or maybe there's like a force field up there where only certain people can go. I don't know, but I just don't see Luffy beating Imu outright. That is why in all the scenarios where I think about Luffy winning here, it usually has to do with Brook or Luffy severing Imu's connection to Gunko. I think that's the easy way out, right? It makes it to where Luffy doesn't beat Imu, but it also doesn't make Imu look bad. You know, it's simply a Gunko thing. Like, oh, Gunko's body can't handle the connection. You know, maybe Brook triggers too many of Gunko's memories, and then Gunko comes back, and then Imu gets kicked out. I think that would be fine. But if we were to just go straight mono-y-mono right here, I don't want Imu to lose. You know, this is potentially the final villain we're talking about. If he were to lose this early, I think that'd just be bad. You know, that would be bad PR for Imu. Like, think about Wano. This is my example. Do you guys remember how hype it was and exciting it was to see Luffy lose to Kaido? It was amazing because we knew that we had to go through a training arc. We had to go through, learn some new Haki, and get stronger to beat Kaido. I think the same thing's gonna happen here with Imu. We're gonna get whooped by Imu, and then we're gonna have a mini training arc. We're gonna get stronger, and then we're gonna go over there and whoop his ass. And you might be wondering, Sai, we do not have the time for a training arc, but here's the thing. Luffy learned Ryuo and Advanced Conqueror's Haki in like a single day. Essentially, it was a single day. So having a mini training arc wouldn't be too much of a detour in my opinion. I feel confident in Chopper being the Forest God. And for the longest time, the Marine-government didn't care about Chopper. Perhaps the meeting with Imu will be what awakens Chopper's fruit. in acknowledgement of his potential. I absolutely agree and love this idea. Chopper does have the human no mi model human, and I always thought that was really odd because never once has Chopper whipped out any form that resembles a human. There's never been a full Zoan human transformation where he looks like Brian, right? That's just never happened. So because all of his transformations are so wacky and so zany and so out of nowhere, I do think that he will have a different devil fruit. I don't know if it'll be as extreme as the Forest God, but I do think it'll be something mythical, to say the least. We are now dealing with 6 immortal ores-sized giants, 2 holy knights, infinite nightmare creatures, and Imu, who might be the devil. Truly, I think this is the most hopelessness One Piece has presented so far, yeah? It's looking pretty bad, man. It is looking pretty bad. But thankfully, speaking of Chopper, Chopper is going after Scopper, and he is going to try to learn how to hurt these damn holy knights. Will it be an ability that all the Strawhats can utilize right off rip? I don't know. That is still, left up to the jury. But there is hope out there. And of course, we still have the mystery of the Heaven Realm on our doorstep. And also, people are bringing up a certain character potentially arriving here in Elbaph. I haven't heard his name be uttered in the past couple of weeks, The seas are calm right now. But we all know that somehow, some way, in this final saga, Oda will squeeze in a Rouge. I don't think, personally, that a Rouge would actually change the dynamics of Elbaph, but there is a loyal Rouge fan base out there who genuinely believe that he is that guy and that he will make an appearance. And I kind of want to pass the question on to you guys, right? Now that we're in the midst of Elbaph, now that we're at the climax of it, do you think a Rouge is going to show up? Because personally, I just don't know how. And if a Rouge comes in, what would he actually do? I might get some hate for saying this, but a Rouge isn't exactly powerful. Right, he's strong to a majority of the world of One Piece, but against Imu, against the Holy Knights, and even in comparison with Zoro, Sanji, and Jimbe, is a Rouge really gonna tilt the scales one way or the other? I don't think so. Unless a Rouge has awakened his devil fruit, unless he has a crazy cracked crew right now, I just can't imagine a Rouge doing much. When people typically speak about a Rouge, it's about the lore he'll bring, about the Birkins, about Enel, maybe about the heavenly secrets he knows. But never once have I heard anybody say, oh, a Rouge is going to come in and beat a Holy Knight. A Rouge is going to come in and save Luffy. Because I just don't see it, brother. But if you guys have any great Rouge ideas or theories, man, I'm all ears, brother. I really am. Alright, so this comment says, I believe that when Dory and Brogy spoke after being transformed into demons, it wasn't themselves speaking, but rather the personality of the demon possessing them through Imu's powers. This parallels Moria's Kage Kage no Mi ability. Just as Moria severs a person's shadow against their will, Imu transformed Dory and Brogy into demons against their will. Furthermore, when Moria transplants a stolen shadow into a zombie, the personality of the shadow's original owner influences the zombie. However, the influence fades over time. Also, Moria's ability to reshape shadows into tangible weapons, like the Shadow Spear, used to stab ores, is similar to Imu and how he weaponizes abstract concepts, like the magic book to summon weapons. Both powers manifest offensive capabilities by manipulating a fundamental essence, (shadows-magic), taken from others, and because Imu's power related to these demons, this explains why they targeted Moria after Marineford. Maybe there's something special about the Shadow Fruit awakening that Imu needs for his-her ultimate plan. Yeah, I do agree with the Moria-Imu parallels here. I think their powers kind of run in tandem, like you said. It would be interesting if this was actually the case, and I wonder how it would even work, right? Let's say you're right. The devil contract and the devils that Imu put into Dory and Brogy is what is dictating their personalities. Are we saying that there's multiple curl demons? Or is it one curl demon that is split among 6 or 7 giants? I think that's kind of where I'm hung up at, right? For Moria, it was 1-to-1, one shadow produced 1 zombie. But for Imu, they only used Domi Reversi curl contract. So it's like, wait a minute, like, are there just multiple of them? How does this actually work? But I do think that there will be a parallel here, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is how it actually goes down. Another great theory, the one that I personally subscribe to, is that the personality that we're seeing right now is simply the dark personality of Dory and Brogy. It's their inner desire, their inner evil. Maybe it's them, but just simply flipped. I think that could also just be the case, but yeah, I don't think this is bad. I do think there will be a Moria tie-in somehow, some way, and eventually we will have to be told and explained as to why the WG wanted to eliminate him back at Marineford. Imu relies on others like Gecko Moria with the shadows, the opposite of Luffy, who uplifts others and brings them to his side naturally. This chapter is monumental for One Piece standards, which is a huge drop. Yes, and the reason I pulled up this comment, despite it being kind of similar to the one we read previously, is because of one of Gecko Moria's abilities that I just remembered. Shadows Asgard. That ability is where Gecko Moria takes in every single shadow within Thriller Bark. Pretty much every shadow that he has possession of, they just fly into Gecko Moria's mouth and he absorbs all of their energy. I wouldn't be shocked if Imu has a very similar power, and if Imu is able to utilize every demon he has within his contracts. Like in Elbaph, right? In this latest chapter, we saw that Imu is utilizing a similar curl transformation like Dory and Brogy. And at first, I made the assumption that that might be one of Imu's forms. And, you know, later on, we'll get like a bigger form whenever we end up seeing their real body. But what if that is not simply the case? What if Imu is able to use every demon transformation we've seen thus far? Like, what if Imu, or the Gunko we see here on this island, can actually turn into the Gyuki, into Saturn, into the Itsumade, like Mars, or maybe even like the Worm, like Jupiter? What if Imu is able to utilize every single demon transformation we have seen in One Piece? I don't think that'd be super crazy, right? Imu could just simply be the master of devils. And the reason I bring that up too is because, you know, for Moria, he simply got a flat stat boost. But think about Luffy in Nightmare Luffy. When Luffy took in the shadow of a swordsman, Luffy learned and he knew how to use a sword. Imu could be the same way. Maybe one minute he has one ability, the next minute he trades it out for another. I think that would be pretty fitting for a final villain. The monster trio, Loki and Scopper, about to pull up looking like the 2017 Warriors. Yeah, they're definitely going to pull up with the sauce, man. I mean, I don't think Scopper will. I think Scopper is going to need definite treatment. I think he'll leave that to the newer generation, right? But I do agree, man. They're going to show up next chapter, and they're going to look freaking amazing. Honestly, a sleeper hit in the underworld. I mean, maybe I'm the only guy rooting for him, but Harden, Gerd, oh, Stanson, Goldberg, brother, Road. I think they could show out, man. I mean, don't underestimate the next generation of giant warrior pirates. I think I'm the only guy who's actually rooting for them, but I mean, I want the Harden glow up. I really do. Despite me not really liking Harden like that, I want him to get that glow up. You know, I think he's been getting little broed way too often. I mean, Loki's been doing that left and right. Even in the flashback with Loki's a kid, he's beating Harden. We need Harden to stand up for himself and get stronger. Harden wants to be king of the giants. Let that man be king. You know, let him show us what he's capable of. You know, funny enough, I say that, but I can't just help imagining Harden getting his ass whooped, but we'll see, we'll see. What if Joy Boy's apology is to Imu herself-himself? Maybe he actually tried to save Imu Narona from whatever devil was attacking, or something along those lines, during the War of the Void Century. And the devil ended up possessing Imu when he couldn't, and Imu won the Void Century. Maybe he wrote the apology on the poneglyphs to try and jog Imu's memories, or something like that happened to Gunko when she saw Brook. Maybe Imu just has to read the apology Joy Boy left, and it could jog her memory, potentially separating herself from whatever devil entity has possessed her. I don't know, just a thought. I like that. I mean, overall, I do like and subscribe to the theory that Imu in the Void Century wasn't a bad person. I mean, just going back to what Vegapunk told us back on Egghead Island, right? He doesn't really know who's right or who's wrong. And then even when Shaka told his hypothesis about the Void Century to Frankie and the group, Frankie's main takeaway was that it was a romantic tale, right? I feel like once we get that Void Century flashback, there will be no clear-cut good and bad people. I think it's just going to be a lot of unfortunate circumstances. And yeah, maybe Imu was good. Maybe they got possessed. Maybe they got corrupted even. And Joy Boy had to try and put them down. But of course they couldn't. I wouldn't be mad at that. Personally, I like that a lot. Sabo, officially the GOAT because he survived against the actual Imu plus the Gorsei. And now we're seeing what they can do through only a manifestation. What a time to be alive indeed. Yeah, Sabo surviving that. I mean, not just Sabo. Sabo, Wapol, and Vivi making it out of the Reverie is pretty absurd. I mean, I gotta know, man. You know, I think the main thing is that Imu was trying to hide their presence, but even still, bro, Sabo made it out. Sabo landed a blow on Imu, and he made it out alive. That's crazy work. That is crazy. And also, since Sabo actually got to see what Imu looked like, I wonder if we'll actually see Imu's reveal from Sabo's perspective first, or if they'll reserve that for the Straw Hats, or maybe even Dragon. Which I guess I want to pass that question on to you guys. When we get the Imu reveal, who do you think will reveal it to us? Do you think Oda's simply going to show us Imu sitting in a room and it's a solo reveal? Do you think it's going to be a Sabo flashback? Do you think it's going to be Luffy when he goes up to Marijoa? Or do you think it's going to be a Void Century flashback that gives us that reveal? And I guess another character we can ask this question towards would be Roxy Zebek. Who's going to give us the Rox reveal? Will it be Garp? Blackbeard? Shanks? Will it be Loki? I don't know, man. Oda is still silhouetting these characters, and I just want to know when we're going to see them, bro. I gotta know. I'm impatient. I'm impatient. This one says, seeing Brogy's hand get blasted off suddenly was crazy. Now that he's a demon, it doesn't look like it fully regenerated. It looks like it's just hanging there for now. We're up to his hand once he breaks free from Imu's control. So this is tough. In the first panel, after he becomes a demon, it does not regenerate. He's still swinging that axe with no wrist. But by the end of the chapter, I think it's like his shield or somebody else's shield, but it's blocking the wrist and you can't see if it's fully come back yet. But I'm putting my money on the thought that it fully regenerated. You know, simply because we don't see that wrist at the very end of the chapter. I could be wrong, but you know, like you said, I think he does need that hand once he breaks free. I think it'll be really sad if he ends up being like Nekomamushi or Inuarashi, where they're just permanently maimed. But yeah. Let's see how that regeneration goes for the Curl contracts. We need to see Luffy get scrapped by Imu in Gear 5th. Luffy needs to realize how much further he still needs to go before his dreams come true. And yep, I agree, brother. I mean, I've already talked about it before, but I would love it if Luffy just stopped and smelled the roses and got stronger. You know, I need him to come to that realization of what he is, and then maybe he can use his powers even better. Maybe Imu says, hey, you know, Luffy, I've seen Gear 5th before. I've seen Sun God Nika Joy Boy in the past. You're not using these powers to its fullest extent. You know, I think that could be the wake-up call to Luffy. And it's funny when you think about it, right? Like, would Imu actually drop those lines if he sees Luffy? Like, oh, Luffy, you have the Sun God Nika fruit, but you fucking suck, buddy. You know, you're not that good compared to Joy Boy. You're not that good compared to the original Sun God. I've seen both of those guys, and you're not him yet. Because I think that could happen, right? People are saying, oh, Gunko is afraid of Nika. Imu is afraid of Nika and Joy Boy. Like, what are they going to say when they see Luffy? And honestly, I don't think they're going to be scared of Luffy. You know, you got to imagine, right? Joy Boy, to our knowledge, was like the pinnacle of power. Nika is like the pinnacle of power. Luffy, he's on his way over there, but he's not there yet. And he's not those guys even, right? They all have different personalities. They're all different people. So I wouldn't be shocked if Imu sees Luffy and he simply says, oh, you're scary, but you're not that scary. You know, you're a greenling. You're still small potatoes, as most would put it. Bachi says, I think that people with the ringed eyes are the only people that Imu can possess because they have the ability to have two personalities, but the other personality being a demon version of that person. Cavendish has Hakuba, and I went back and watched when he was first introduced, and it just comes off as an evil version of Cavendish, but he's unable to control it. And then there's Gunko, who's directly a vessel for Imu to possess and take control over, in which she can't control, but I'm curious if there's a dominant form in her besides Imu taking over her body. Then there's Mihawk, who I believe has full control over it, as to why Zoro perceives the Seraphim as having more humanity and showing emotions, while Mihawk is described as robotic and detached. I don't know, it's just a thought, but it's pretty interesting. It gets me excited to see what Mihawk is truly capable of. Love the videos, keep it up. What a time to be alive. Appreciate the two, brother. Yes, I am curious. I do like the Cavendish throw in here, because I think that is a pretty direct parallel, right? Cavendish has two personalities. They're fighting for control over the body, very much like Gunko and Imu, but the ringed eye conversation does get really hazy because of Mihawk, right? I really just do not know how Mihawk would fit into this conversation. Maybe Mihawk as a kid was being experimented on by the world government. Maybe they were like a Ginny Bonnie type of situation, and Mihawk simply failed. He was a flunky. All right, maybe they were aiming for the heterochromia eyes like Gunko has, right? You know, one eye's one way, the other eye's the other way. Maybe that's what they wanted, and Mihawk was a defect because both of his eyes were ringed. Maybe that's it. Right? I feel like the ringed eye conversation does just get really hazy whenever we bring it up, simply because of Mihawk and how he would fit into it, and also because of the other prominent character with ringed eyes, Caribou. Why does Caribou have them, man? Like, Mihawk, it's like, okay, you know, potential royal lineage, world's strongest swordsman, maybe he's an Imu candidate, sure, but and then there's Caribou, who is a straight anomaly, right? But with that being said, though, guys, thank you so much for being here and dropping those comments as per usual. I really freaking appreciate it. Hopefully you guys had a fun time here. Let me know what theories you come up with now that a couple days have passed since the chapter is dropped. And yeah, 11:51 is right around the corner, so I'm excited for that. My predictions? Well, I want Luffy to show up. You know, I want Luffy, Loki, Hardin, Zoro, Sanji. I want them all to show up. And if not, I at least want Chopper and Scopper. I want to know how to hurt the Holy Knights. I feel like we've been guessing for a long time now, and I'm just ready to rip off that Band-Aid, brother. I really am. Also, a sleeper pick as well. A sleeper pick for who could show up here in Elbaph that could change the tides of battle. Maybe Mosa. I think it'd be really cool if Mosa just came out of nowhere. The guy that Loki was talking to at the beginning of Elbaph. I think it'd be awesome if they just dropped in from the Heaven World or maybe from the tower, wherever they were being kept, and they just start kicking ass. Will that be possible, though? They didn't exactly sound like a fighter, but you never know, man. And then the owl. You know, I want to see the owl do something. I want to see that owl save the library, or maybe just whip out some ancient techniques, because that owl has been there for hundreds of years. If it doesn't know how to put out a fire, brother, that would be a major L. But again, with that being said, though, guys, thank you so much for spending your time here again, and I'll catch y'all later. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day, and peace out.